Set in the 15th century, Dracula Untold presents a reimagined origin story of Count Dracula, intertwining historical facts with elements of myth and fantasy. The narrative focuses on Vlad III Tepes, the Prince of Wallachia and Transylvania, who evolves into the legendary vampire Dracula. The film introduces Vlad's harrowing childhood, where he was seized by the Turkish Empire as part of a political tribute. Raised as a soldier within the Ottoman army, he earned the fierce moniker Vlad the Impaler due to his brutal tactics in battle. Nevertheless, he ultimately returns home to rule Wallachia peacefully, determined to shed his violent past. As a devoted husband to Myrna and a loving father to their son Ingeraz, he strives to maintain harmony in his kingdom. While Wallachia enjoys a semblance of peace under Vlad's rule, a looming threat surfaces when he detects dark activity in the nearby mountains. The disappearance of several soldiers during an investigation of a Turkish helmet found in a river prompts Vlad to delve deeper. Accompanied by a handful of soldiers, he follows the leads to Broken Tooth Mountain, wherein they stumble upon a cave packed with bones. Here, they encounter a horrifying supernatural being, a vampire which devours Vlad's men but allows him to escape. This ancient creature, cursed to remain in the cave, awaits a recipient who will take on its formidable powers. Soon after this encounter, envoys from the Ottoman Empire emerge in Vlad's court. Sultan Mehmed II, who remembers Vlad from his youth, demands a tribute of 1,000 boys for his army, targeting Vlad's own son as part of the requisition. Despite Vlad's desperate pleas to both the emissary and Mehmed himself, he meets with indifference and rejection. Recognizing the imminent danger to his family and kingdom, Vlad seeks to rally his small army, but they are overwhelmingly outmatched. Faced with the dire prospect of losing everything he holds dear, Vlad returns to the mountain, engaging with the vampire dwelling within the cave identified as the Master Vampire, portrayed by Charles Dance. In a moment of desperation, Vlad is presented with a tempting proposition. The Master will grant him extraordinary powers, including enhanced strength, speed, and control over bats. However, there are conditions to this pact. If Vlad can abstain from drinking human blood for 3 days, the vampire's curse will be lifted, and he will revert to his human form. Conversely, succumbing to the temptation will bind him eternally to the vampire realm and release the Master from his long-standing curse. Vlad, having accepted a dark curse, drinks the blood of a vampire, which instigates a terrifying transformation. The following morning, he awakens endowed with enhanced senses, superhuman strength, and the eerie ability to command bats. As he begins experimenting with his newfound powers, he grapples with their immense capabilities and the darker impulses that accompany them. Demonstrating the full extent of his powers, Vlad single-handedly decimates a Turkish scouting party and returns triumphantly to his people. However, his transformation soon raises eyebrows among his loyal subjects. His aversion to sunlight, loss of appetite, and unnatural strength breed unease among them, although Myrna, his beloved, remains steadfast by his side, despite growing suspicions about his condition. As tensions escalate, Vlad conceals his transformation and takes on the mantle of preparing for war. He seeks refuge for his people in a monastery, aiming to protect them from the impending Ottoman invasion. When the Turkish forces draw near, Vlad unleashes his powers with devastating effect. He morphs into a swarm of bats and dispatches enemies with precise brutality. These encounters depict Vlad as a conflicted character, part heroic savior, part monstrous beast. However, the burden of his transformation weighs heavily on him. His thirst for blood becomes an insatiable hunger, putting him at risk of preying upon his own people. The church denounces him as a demon, causing allies to grow wary and distant. In a moment of weakness on the battlefield, Vlad succumbs to the desire for blood and drinks from dying soldiers, accelerating his transformation and sealing his fate as a full-fledged vampire. As his forces dwindle, the Turkish leader Mehmed kidnaps both Ingeraz and Myrna, challenging Vlad to a climactic confrontation. Despite his haste, Vlad arrives too late to save Myrna, who is mortally wounded. In her final moments, she implores Vlad to drink her blood, gifting him the power necessary to save their son. Heartbroken, he succumbs to his vampiric nature, and the curse becomes permanent, releasing the Master Vampire from confinement. Empowered, Vlad unleashes a terrifying wrath upon Mehmed's army, creating a legion of vampires by sharing his blood with dying soldiers. The final battle, a spectacle of supernatural might, culminates in a fierce duel against Mehmed, armed with Silver the Vampire's Bane. Vlad ultimately prevails, impaling Mehmed, but victory comes with devastating losses. In the aftermath, Vlad discovers Ingeraz is safe but surrounded by fear and distrust. The monks, wary of Vlad's monstrous transformation, take the boy away, believing him a danger to his son. To protect Ingeraz, Vlad steps into sunlight, a self-sacrifice, but one of his vampire soldiers repays his loyalty, pulling him into shadows and reviving him with blood, ensuring his survival. Dracula Untold concludes in modern-day London, where Vlad, now dressed in contemporary attire, encounters a woman resembling his long-lost love, Myrna. This moment carries implications of reincarnation, as the two share a serene connection while walking away together. Observing them is the Master Vampire, who ominously declares, "Let the games begin," indicating an impending larger supernatural conflict. The film intricately weaves themes of sacrifice and the true cost of power throughout Vlad's transformation from noble ruler to cursed immortal. Driven by an overwhelming desire to protect his people and family, each of Vlad's choices pushes him further into darkness. Rather than portraying Dracula as a villain, the narrative frames him as a tragic hero, a character who morphs into a monster out of love and desperation. Central to Vlad's character arc is the tension between humanity and monstrosity. While he acquires formidable power, he simultaneously forfeits his soul, loses his beloved wife, and ultimately disconnects from his son. His ultimate metamorphosis serves not as a triumphant moment but as a poignant one, marked by sorrow and loss. Visually, Dracula Untold merges elements of gothic horror with the flair of modern blockbuster action. The cinematography, dominated by shadow and moonlight, brilliantly captures the film's dark narrative. The extensive use of CGI, particularly in the depiction of bat swarms and supernatural battles, establishes a mythic atmosphere that enhances the cinematic experience. The film's conclusion suggests a possible sequel, though it was never produced, setting the stage for a broader conflict between humanity and the vampire world in contemporary society. In doing so, it repositions Dracula as not merely a figure of legend, but as a complex anti-hero reflective of a modern narrative. Set in the grim landscape of 15th century Transylvania, the story begins with Prince Vlad the Impaler, who governs with a quiet yet formidable strength. Previously a brutal warrior in the Ottoman army, earning the moniker Vlad the Impaler due to his ruthless battlefield tactics, he now aspires to secure peace for his people. He is depicted as a fair ruler, dedicated to his loving wife, Myrna, and their young son, Ingeraz, both of whom form the core of his existence. Vlad's hard-earned peace begins to unravel upon the discovery of an ominous Turkish helmet in a nearby river, prompting him to suspect an Ottoman incursion. Alongside a small group of soldiers, he traces the source to the ominous Broken Tooth Mountain. Inside a foreboding cavern littered with bones, the group is unexpectedly ambushed by a swift and powerful creature, which decimates Vlad's men but spares him. This encounter leaves Vlad shaken, haunted by the realization that a deep-seated evil lies in close proximity to his realm. The mountains to prepare for the inevitable Ottoman assault. However, his newfound abilities put a strain on his relationships. Myrna, his wife, begins to notice changes in him, sensing an unsettling distance. As Vlad trains his forces with his heightened physical prowess, he struggles internally with the urge to give in to his vampire instincts. As the months pass, the Ottoman army, under Myrna's command, amasses a formidable force and marches toward Vlad's territory. Vlad, eager to defend his land, manages to keep the essence of his humanity by focusing on his love for Myrna and their son. However, the secret of his vampiric nature gnaws at him, creating an ever-widening chasm between him and his family. Despite his efforts to rally his men, Vlad's actions grow more violent and ruthless as he faces intense pressure. His thirst for blood becomes increasingly difficult to resist, leading to a desperate and grueling internal struggle. Sometimes in public moments of clarity, he contemplates the cost of his power, wondering if the sacrifices he is making are worth the protection of his family and his realm. When the Ottoman forces finally arrive, Vlad's enemies are not only battling an army but also the darkness that has begun to seep into Vlad himself. He leads a fierce resistance at the kingdom's border, showcasing extraordinary combat skills that bewilder and terrify his foes. Yet, the taste of victory is tainted by his desire to unleash the full extent of his vampire capabilities. As the battle rages, the question looms, will he be able to control the beast within, or will it consume him entirely? The climax of the conflict leads to a confrontation with Myrna, challenging not only their armies but the very nature of power and humanity. In a moment of reckoning, Vlad must decide if he will sacrifice himself for his family and kingdom, or if he will embrace the darkness entirely, potentially losing everything including his soul. Ultimately, this turning point will not only shape his legacy but also determine the fate of those he loves. The fight for freedom against the oppressive Ottoman Empire becomes a journey of self-discovery, forcing Vlad to question the meaning of strength, duty, and sacrifice in a world driven by fear and bloodshed. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.